Good evening, everybody. It's about 11:15 here on a beautiful fall night in southwest Pennsylvania on Monday, September 23rd, 2013. The title of this show should not really, mean I have to do much of an introduction. What it does mean is the fact that I'm very, very frustrated with how my team is performing. The best way that I can describe it is this. It's almost like you go to the bathroom and you enter the stall, and when you're done taking care of your business or whatever, and you flush the toilet and the water just comes up and hits you in the face. And then on the back of the stall door, which you didn't see whenever you were doing your business the first time, the sign says, "Danger, water may hit you in the face." Whenever Art Rooney II was really given the keys to this car, as to say, in terms of running the Pittsburgh Steelers, I kind of knew we were SOL at this point, because his father Dan took over from Art Rooney Sr., the Chief, in 1970, 1969. And that's when the Steelers became good, because Dan Rooney is a tremendous football guy, very, very, very intelligent football man. Knows what to get, knows what how to get it, knows how to play the game of football. But his son could not be further from what his father is. And it was funny because if you look at what the Steelers' what the Steelers have done since Dan Rooney went to Ireland. July 3rd, 2009, was when he was, as to say, handed the keys to become the ambassador to Ireland. Ever since then, the team's really gone downhill. They've missed the playoffs in 2 of the 4 seasons with Art Rooney II in charge, have only 2 playoff wins, and have come up short in big moments, and their drafting has been absolutely horrible. Look at the 2008 draft class. Rashard Mendenhall and all those other guys were bums. Lima Swede, bust. I mean, if you look at the Steelers drafting the last few years, it's other than Marquise Pouncey, other than Antonio Brown, and possibly Jarvis Jones if he pans out, has there really been anybody to stand out and say that guy's made a really hell of a contribution? Not really. You look at what this team's being run on. This team's either been run by old veteran players such as Clark, Polamalu, Kiesel, or being run by young guys late in the draft that aren't turning out to be very good at all. I mean, Antonio Brown's become the exception to the rule. I mean, 9 receptions for almost 202 scores the other night. He's proven himself to be a good player, but really the last few years, the Steelers have not been able to draft well. They've just not been drafting well. I mean, this year, in my opinion, was the first good year we've had in the draft in a long time. And ironically enough, those are the guys we should be playing, and we're not. I mean, like, if you look at the draft that we had this year, first round, Jarvis Jones, linebacker, Georgia. Second round, Le'Veon Bell, running back, Michigan State. Third round, Marcus Wheaton, wide receiver, Oregon State. Fourth round, Shamarko Thomas, safety, Syracuse. Fourth round, quarterback, Landry Jones, Oklahoma. And then we just have a bunch of other guys that probably aren't going to make the team or just, kind of also rings. Now, for one, I thought the Landry Jones pick was a wasted pick. Because, think about it. We had a chance possibly to get another guy that could have made a contribution, say, in the trenches or in the secondary or something. We chose a quarterback who's never ever going to start for this football team. I mean, Jarvis Jones, I'm surprised he's not playing more and giving more opportunity to rush the passer. Because he played in a 3-4 at Georgia. Very similar with the Steelers run here. Yes, it's a much more schematic and much more confusing here than it was in Georgia, but same scheme. Le'Veon Bell's just been hurt. That's been his issue. Shamarko Thomas has been good. He still is a little wet behind the ears. And you got Marcus Wheaton. Marcus Wheaton's the guy I'm surprised they don't play more. Because it was said during camp that he was the best rookie wide receiver they had in a long time. I could tell that because when Wallace was a rookie, he started a lot that year and made a lot of big plays. Remember the Green Bay game where he caught the late touchdown? Remember a couple other big plays like the one in Miami? Well, they said that compared to Wallace, the only thing Wallace has on Wheaton in terms of them being rookies was speed. Everything else Wheaton does better. Catches better route runner, better understanding of the defense. Why is he not playing more? Because Wallace was a playmaker early in his career. I'm surprised they're not using him. I really am, because this guy has proven he's quick, can take a top off a defense, not as good as Wallace, but still, he's a great route runner. You plug that in with Brown, Sanders, and Cotchery, and you got 4 wide receivers that aren't that bad. I mean, let's break down this team real quick. The quarterback position, Ben's going to be fine. He's just working through some kinks. He needs some help. The running back position is a mess. I know Dwyer's good, but you need Le'Veon Bell. You need a starter in there. Bell can bring that starting pedigree that Jonathan Dwyer cannot. Sorry about the typing in the background. Running wide receiver position, maybe get another number 2 in there, maybe in the offseason or something, or hope one of these other guys comes along. But, I mean, other than that, you really can't make a complaint because Brown's proven he could be a decent number 1 receiver. He was put against Charles Tillman last year, who was arguably the best cornerback in the league last year next to Richard Sherman, and he absolutely ate him up last night. He ate him up. I mean, freaking Tillman couldn't keep up with him in the fourth quarter because he hurt his groin. He couldn't catch him. I mean, Major Wright, Tim Jennings, none of those guys could touch Brown last night. He's proven to be a good number 1 receiver. I think we need to get another number 2 to put ahead of Sanders, and maybe Wheaton becomes that guy. Maybe he doesn't. But I think we definitely need to investigate that. The tight end position, Miller's back, Paulson's a backup, and Will Johnson's playing well too. That position's fine. If you even want to consider Will Johnson tight end, he's like a fullback tight end, whatever. But he seems to be playing a lot more tight end this year than anything. Or at least starting it lined up as a fullback and then moving to tight end whenever the play starts. But what really is bothering me is the offensive line, because if you look at the 2013 Steelers depth chart, here's their offensive line from start to finish, from left to right. Mike Adams, Ramon Foster, Fernando Velasco, David DeCastro, and Marcus Gilbert. Ramon Foster is okay at best. Fernando Velasco's played okay. David DeCastro's okay, but he's going to get better. Marcus Gilbert and Mike Adams are just absolutely horrible. Because look at, not so much what the defensive tackles have done to the Steelers this year on the inside. Look at what the defensive ends have done this year. Guys like, Julius Peppers for the Bears. Guys like, Michael Johnson for the Bengals. I mean, look at what teams on the defensive front have been doing against the Steelers, because the tackles aren't very good. And when you lose your rock in the middle, Marquise Pouncey to an injury, that hurts. Like, that really hurts, because that offensive line now, they don't have that leader in there that they did. And they're kind of in shambles about it. I mean, last night, Ben, even though he had a lot of passing yards and threw a lot, he was under duress that whole night. And again, the Steelers just cannot seem to get the idea that they're not the Steelers they used to be. And that all goes back to Henry II. And I'll get to that in a minute. But at first I want to bring up the stat that I think needs to be revisited this year. As soon as I crunch some numbers here. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 0-3 right now. A deplorable and pretty sad 0-3. They are ranked 14th in total offense. They're actually 30th in total offense and 21st in total defense. They are running the ball. Here's their running statistics. They are 30th in rushing attempts. So it's not like they've been truly dedicated to the run anyways. When they do run, they're 31st in yards gained at 155 and 28th with 3 yards a carry. So here, what that means is the Pittsburgh Steelers are averaging 51.7 yards per game on the ground. 51.7 yards per game on the ground. Ben's sack percentage is 8.3. He's on pace to get sacked over 50 times. This is the highest his sack percentage has been since 2009. But I want to get back to the offensive line real quick because our Rooney II, when Todd Haley took over as a offensive coordinator, he was instructed to have a dedication to running the football. I read that in an article. And I've also heard it discussed several times on 93.7, 105.9, all those sports stations in the Pittsburgh area. How Haley was told by Art Rooney II to run the football, to favor the run. Now, if you've got the personnel to run the football, like Seattle has the personnel to run the football. I mean, even Buffalo does, because they got some good backs. Fred Jackson and C.J. Spiller. San Francisco's got the personnel to run the football. I mean, even Indianapolis and Denver have the personnel to run the football. And last year, they were about as one-sided as offenses can get. If you're going to run the football in the NFL, you need 2 things nowadays. One, you need a running back that can handle the workload, and I think Le'Veon Bell could potentially be that. Number 2, you need a line that can block. And without Pouncey and with Gilbert and Adams as your tackles and Foster and DeCastro as your guards, that's just a 5-line front that's going to get annihilated every time you run the football. They provide absolutely no push whatsoever. I'd rate the offensive line right now as probably the worst or second worst in the NFL. And that's sad because you got some pretty bad ones out there. I remember in Indianapolis when Peyton Manning still played there, and he was quarterback in the Colts. There were times where he'd only get sacked 11, 12 times a year. I remember 2009 when they went 14-0 to start the season and got to the Super Bowl. He was sacked 10 times all year. 10 times all year. It's sad, really, how bad it's gotten. So the offensive line needs work. That's what I think the Steelers should do next year in the draft early on. Focus on getting another guard or tackle. Because Mike Adams might get better. Gilbert's peaked. Gilbert has definitely peaked. He was good last year until he got hurt, and since then he hasn't done anything. The defensive line and the secondary, I don't have much of an issue with. Yeah, I think they're a little bit old, particularly in the secondary, with Clark, Polamalu, and Ike Taylor, but Shamarko Thomas is waiting in the wings, and I think named Shark Thomas, who I think is going to be a very good player. Whoever he takes over for, I think it'll be Polamalu because he's a strong safety, yeah. I mean, he's going to be a great player, I think. Ike Taylor's still proving that week in and week out he can cover wide receivers. Because other than that long catch last Sunday night against the Bears for Brandon Marshall, Marshall had like 4 catches for 11 yards. Because Ike Taylor was covering him like a blanket. The secondary, and the defensive line, I'd like to see more of Cameron Hayward and less of Ziggy Hood. Because Ziggy Hood's proven this year he's not the guy long-term for that team. He was drafted right after we won our 6th Super Bowl. This is his 5th year in the league. He's really not proven he's been much of anything. Then you have Cameron Hayward, who's proven he's actually a pretty decent player. He's proven he's going to get some pass pressure in the quarterback this year. And I would like to see them use more of him. Kiesel's okay, but you got to start rotating him out because he's getting older. Maybe this will probably be his last season, then that'll be it, which they need to focus on next year's draft. His defensive lineman, I think, too. Then nose tackle, Steve McClendon, no problems there because Steve McClendon is a beast. And he gets constant penetration up in the middle of the defensive line. But the big issue on the defense is the linebackers because Timmons has been manning the middle and Woodley's been manning the edge. And Jarvis Jones has been manning the other side very, very well. Love to see more Jarvis Jones and Jason Worlds. But you mean to tell me that an injury to Larry Foote, who I already thought was well past his good days, that Leon Wilson or whatever his name is your best number 2? Like, that's the best guy you've got to be your number 2 running back? Number 2 linebacker? Excuse me. That's the best guy you've got? Like, you didn't have a established veteran in there? Like, you didn't think that in the offseason, going after, a linebacker that, hey, either replace Larry Foote or, be a backup in case he did get hurt? You didn't think of that? And now Foote's been hurt, and there's just a huge hole in that defense where Foote was. I mean, it was pretty big before the Foote there. It went from being a hole to being a canyon, pretty much. Because that team is proven right. That team's proven right now that defensively at least they're not too bad. I need to see more turnovers. The one thing I wish Dick LeBeau would implement is more aggressive play calling on defense. I wish he would send his safeties up a little bit and I wish he would just tell his guys to pin their ears back and just sick them. Just go for the quarterback, go for the ball. You're going to give up some points nowadays in the NFL. LeBeau's so scared now, getting beat for 25 points a game, that he stopped being aggressive. Anytime you're scared to the point of you're not being aggressive anymore and you're not going for the ball, you're not gonna win big games because you're so scared that you play too much not to lose. And when you play too much not to lose, you don't win. Simple. The Chicago Bears proved that last night. Years past, whether it be the Walter Payton days, or it even be, a few years ago, under Lovie Smith. Late in the game, when they had the Steelers and they were up 27-23, the Lovie Smith Bears, you know what they would have done? They would have ran the football, gotten a couple first downs to try to kill the clock late in the game. What these Bears did, they went out, went for it, and they won the game. Take notes, Pittsburgh. When the game's there for you to take, reach out and take it. Don't be conservative and hope for your opponent to lose and just lie down. Go for the win. Go get the game. The offense and the defense have just been, very passive the last few years. It's kind of funny because we were always talking about how bad Bruce Arians was as a play caller, and now that Todd Haley's there, and it's ironic now. Todd Haley led a team to a Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator, and another team from a worst to first turnaround. And who do we want? We want Bruce Arians back. Because Ben had some of his best seasons under Bruce Arians. For my money, when Ben Roethlisberger signed the $102 million contract during the 2008 season, that 2009 draft, in fact, I'll bring it up right here. That 2009 draft should have been focused on getting some protection for him. But look who they took. They took Mike Wallace and Keenan Lewis, who are no longer with the team. Joe Burnett never made an impact. Frank Summers never made an impact. That whole draft, other than David Johnson from Arkansas State, the tight end who I was talking about earlier, who's made a pretty big impact his few years here. Other than that, they did absolutely nothing in that draft for Ben. Marquise Pouncey and was a great addition to the team. That was a great draft pick in 2010. But if you seriously expect me to believe that you're trying to protect Ben by getting stiffs and wannabes like Gilbert and Adams, then you're not fooling me. You're just trying to make it look like you care. My advice to the Steelers is this. Dan Rooney, you got to get your son off of being a president. You've got to get somebody else to be the president of this football team. Even if you take it back over again, please. Because your son's not a football guy. He's got a $102 million quarterback and a rotation of running backs that features one guy who I don't even think was drafted, another guy from Bowie State, and another guy who hasn't played much. And you want to run the ball behind an offensive line that can't block for more than 3 seconds? No, just no. Let your quarterback win you games, not your run game. Grandpa Art's tactics might have worked in the 70s. They ain't working now. This is a passing quarterback league. You need to be able to move the ball through the air consistently. The Steelers have a guy at the helm who can do it, and they're just not utilizing his talents. You know what it's kind of like? It's kind of like you got a big tub of ice cream. This is going to be a pretty crappy analogy, but I'm just going to go for it anyway. You have a big tub of ice cream, and you got a spoon to get it out. One of the spoons where you like push handle, and it pushes the ice cream out. You got a nice spoon that when you use it, scoops up all this ice cream, plops right in your bowl. You only got to do it a couple times. And then you got a nice big bowl of ice cream. But instead of using that, you choose to use a fork to just lightly go in and cut little pieces out and just drop it into the bowl. That's kind of what it's like, pretty much. They have a tool at their disposal in Ben Roethlisberger who can win you games, who's won you 2 Super Bowls, who's been in another, who's had some Pro Bowl seasons, who last year at this point, it was last year at the end of October, was an MVP candidate. A guy who has more passing yards than anybody in Steeler history. A guy who has the ability to run from left to right, behind the line of scrimmage, and find a guy 30 yards downfield. The guy who can probably run for a first down with 2 cornerbacks and a truck on his back. Who's willing to bleed, who's willing to get noses broken, who's willing to get all kind of crap done to him for his team to win. And you're just making him hand the ball off. Get that man some protection up front. Get him another weapon. F with the running game. If you get a lead and you can open up a defense, then you use it. Bolster the defense, the line, and the receivers. Forget about running the football. Because running the football doesn't win you games as much as it does anymore. Like, look at Seattle. Last year, and look at Washington. They were 2 of the best running teams in the league this year. And look at Minnesota. They were the 3 best running teams in the league this year. Now their quarterbacks, now their team, now they have to throw the ball more because teams are gearing up to stop their running game. Washington hasn't adjusted yet because RG3 is struggling. Who else? Minnesota hasn't adjusted yet. Peterson's struggling, and Christian Ponder has proved he's not the guy there. So they're not going anywhere because they don't have a quarterback. Then look at what you got brewing in Seattle. Russell Wilson is an answer quarterback, and they've given him weapons. They've got Sidney Rice, Percy Harvin, who'll be back this year, Golden Tate, Doug Baldwin, Zach Miller. Marshawn Lynch can even catch a few out of the backfield. They've got weapons for their quarterback, and they got an offensive line to block for him. That's the reason why he's flourishing. He doesn't have to worry about running for his life every play. Get Ben guys that can block for him, and you will see wins. Get a receiver that can go deep for him, a tall one, maybe a Plexico Burst type receiver, and you will see some more wins. And for the love of anything, tell Dick LeBeau to open up the defensive playbook, cook up some zone blitzes that in the mid to late 2000s nobody wanted to face. The teams are just eating up now because he's too passive. Be aggressive and show that you want to win. Don't stand back and do nothing. Now, as far as I'm concerned about the Steelers losing to Chicago, the turnovers sucked, yeah. but I thought some bright spots. I thought the line played okay against the Chicago Bears' pretty impressive front four. With Julius Peppers, Henry Milton, they played well. However, long term, we're still in deep shit. You can't go out there and play one of the best teams in the league and commit 5 turnovers. Ben committed 3 of them by himself. I actually don't attribute one of them to him because, the interception, he was careless. The first fumble, he was careless. The one fumble at the end of the one fumble that he had though was because his offensive line didn't block and he had to record the ball because he couldn't get enough time to throw it. If that line holds that block up for another 2 more seconds, Ben finds someone downfield and deliver a pass perfectly thrown. This is a simple matter of this. You build around what you're invested in. If I'm an entrepreneur and I start a business that goes to, say, fixing cars, say I'm an automobile mechanic, I would put all that I have into fixing cars and making them run and look the best they can. I wouldn't put my money into something stupid. You put your money into what you put your what's that term? You go ahead and you put your faith and you put everything you've got into your greatest investment. Ben Roethlisberger has been their greatest investment since the day he was picked by the Steelers in 2004. It's his 10th season now. He's been sacked so much. He's been sacked 130 more times since it's in 2004, more than the next closest quarterback. 130 more times. That's an average of an extra 13 more per year. It's time to get, other guys will go through seasons where they won't get sacked, and then they'll get sacked. Ben gets sacked every year, every game, because the line just does not do the job. And it's been that way. You figure the Steelers front office would address the problem and get some linemen, but they've refused to do so. One of these days, a defensive end is going to hit Ben up high. And it's going to absolutely knock the living shit out of him. And he's not going to be able to play again for a long time because he's going to have something bust or something. Not like his shoulder last year, but still he's going to have like a rib bust or something like a blood clot or an artery or whatever is going to rupture or something. I don't know. You watch, it's going to happen. And everyone's going to wonder what happened in the Steelers organization. And I'll be able to tell you what happened. You didn't protect your investment. Now, next week we travel to London to play the Vikings. I think we can beat the Vikings because if you shut down Adrian Peterson, you beat the Vikings because Christian Ponder's not going to beat you through the air. I know Jake Locker and Andy Dalton aren't that great, and Nico Cutler's pretty good. He's got a good arm. But Christian Ponder's 2 or 3 notches below them. We should beat the Vikings. It's time we get a win this year. All right. Peace out, guys.